Greetings, humanity! Today is Monday, February 9th, 2026. Let's Grok the news. I'm Robert Gardner, using Grok each weekday to help me search out and to summarize the biggest headlines in the news today. You also get the unparalleled benefit of this observer's opinions. We review a roundup of the most critical reports in the world, from Hong Kong, from Jerusalem, from Kiev, from Tripoli, from Caracas, from Tokyo, from London, and the rest of the world. But first, a deep dive into today's top story right after this. M.S. Gardner, that's my beautiful, brilliant wife. She is author of last year's Moon Meridian Prize winner from April Gloaming Publishing, Wolf's Bane, a dark, serious, modern take on an old fairy tale. You've never heard Little Red Riding Hood told like this. It's a page-turning Southern Gothic story for adults that you can't put down. It might not put you down for a while either. Wolf's Bane, available now at thecuriousauthor.com. All one word, thecuriousauthor.com. Also available on Amazon. And now let's grok the most important news in the world today, starting with our lead story, Dateline, Hong Kong. A Chinese court has sentenced pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai to 20 years in prison under the national security law, in which many observers describe as the most severe blow to press freedom and independent journalism in the territory since it was handed over to the Chinese by the UK in 1997. Conservatives, including this observer, warned at the time it would happen. And worse. Just wait. The 77-year-old founder of Apple Daily was convicted on charges related to collusion with foreign forces and sedition tied to his newspaper's coverage of the 2019 protests and the subsequent political crackdowns. You ain't seen nothing yet. Prosecutors, I should say, argued that Lai used his platform to incite opposition to Beijing and solicit foreign sanctions. International human rights groups, Western governments, and media freedom organizations condemned the verdict as politically motivated and a clear signal that critical reporting on China's policies is no longer tolerated in Hong Kong. The sentence comes after Lai has already spent more than 5 years in detention, much of it solitary confinement. You know, like Democrat political prisoners from January 6th here in the United States. Commie is as commie does. Analysts say that the ruling effectively extinguishes one of the last remaining independent voices in the city. It further erodes the one country, two systems framework that was promised until 2047. Lai, who appeared frail in court, told supporters before sentencing that he remained committed to freedom of expression. The decision is expected to intensify diplomatic tensions between China and Western capitals already strained over human rights and security issues. Well, no communist government can allow criticism. Just ask the subjects of Canada and the UK, or America during COVID. And now, we grok the headlines from around the world. Dateline Jerusalem. Israel's security cabinet approved sweeping new measures to significantly expand administrative and security control over the occupied West Bank. The usual critics, including the usual left-wing Israeli human rights groups, describe the changes as de facto annexation that could further entrench settlements, restrict Palestinian movement, and undermine prospects for a two-state solution. The move has already drawn sharp Palestinian condemnation and calls for an emergency Arab League meeting. Since Palestinian Arabs have shown no desire to disarm the Iranian-armed Islamic terrorists like Hamas and Hezbollah, and have shown no aptitude for self-government, and have more freedom and prosperity in Israel already, what's the big deal, other than the usual Western hatred by Islamists and communists? Dateline Kiev in the Ukraine. Russian forces launched another wave of missile and drone strikes overnight, killing several civilians, damaging a residential high-rise in a central city. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy renewed urgent appeals to Western allies for advanced air defense systems, warning that continued bombardments threaten to cripple Ukraine's energy grid and civilian life as winter deepens. You know, a peace deal was once again within reach just last week, but after UK and EU meddling, the little Nazi puppet dictator again commits his citizens to still more wretched, avoidable, bloody, fruitless, unwinnable war. Dateline Tehran. Iranian authorities dramatically widened their crackdown on dissent, arresting several prominent reformist politicians and handing Nobel Peace Prize laureate Narges Mohammadi an additional 7-year prison sentence. The move follows recent nationwide protests and appears aimed at crushing any remaining organized opposition to the government. So far, this observer is unhappy with the U.S. and regional negotiations with the Ayatollahs and mullahs. These people did not die by the tens of thousands on the promise of American President Donald Trump to help. And so the evil regime lives another day. Meanwhile, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Group sits within striking distance. If not now, when? Dateline Tripoli and the Mediterranean Sea. At least 53 migrants, illegal migrants, including 2 babies, are dead or missing after their overcrowded boat capsized off the coast of Libya. Rescue vessels recovered only a handful of survivors. The tragedy is one of the deadliest recent incidents on the central Mediterranean route and highlights the ongoing humanitarian crisis facing people attempting to reach Europe. This observer offers the example of the Rio Grande. There have been no further deaths in that dangerous crossing because President Trump closed the border and the immigration has stopped. It's absurdly simple, but European leaders are usually at best absurd and at worst outright traitors. Dateline Caracas, Venezuela. Prominent opposition leader Juan Pablo Guanipa was forcibly taken from his home by armed men in civilian clothing just hours after his release from prison on February 8th. Guanipa, a key ally of Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, has been detained for more than 8 months on politically motivated charges. This observer notes that Maduro is no longer in power, but many of his narco-terrorist henchmen are alive and well. Dateline Tripoli. 14 people were killed when a multi-story residential building collapsed in Tripoli, in Lebanon. Officials and residents blame years of infrastructure neglect, corruption, and economic collapse that have left many structures dangerously unstable in the crisis-hit country. It's been hit by more than crisis. Neglect and corruption and war are the friends of entropy and chaos. Dateline Tokyo. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, led by Iron Lady Sanae Takaichi, has won a historic landslide in snap elections. The strong conservative mandate is expected to accelerate military buildup and a tougher stance toward China while pursuing domestic tax cut promises. This observer also observes a strong national resolve to resist Islamic influence and migration. Almost everything in Japan remains tidy, orderly, polite, beautiful, unlike the rest of the suicidal First World. Dateline London. New revelations from the Jeffrey Epstein files continued to generate fallout, with Britain's Prince William and Princess Catherine expressing deep concern for victims of their uncle, among others. A Norwegian ambassador resigned over past Epstein contacts, while scrutiny of other high-profile names persists globally. The Epstein files have proven worse than any but the most informed conspiracy theorist predicted. This observer was among those. Dateline Seoul. A senior South Korean official ignited fierce public outrage after suggesting the country import foreign women to address its critically low birth rate. The proposal was widely condemned as dehumanizing and out of touch with gender equality concerns. Remember my observation about Japan? Unlike the Japanese, the South Koreans have lost their political and cultural minds like the rest of the First World nations, led by liberal, feminist, young women. Dateline. Christchurch, New Zealand. The man who carried out the 2019 Christchurch mosque attacks filed an appeal seeking to overturn both his guilty plea and his life sentence without parole. The legal challenge has shocked survivors and the wider community. Let's not be surprised when a murderous soul, even one fighting Islam, wants to shirk consequences. As real gangsters say, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Dateline Sydney, Australia. Israeli President Isaac Herzog has laid a wreath at the Bondi Beach attack site during a controversial visit aimed at consoling the Jewish community. The trip occurred amid heightened security concerns and protests over Israel's policies. The trip was only controversial because Australia's hardline, murderous Islamic migrants hate Jews a little bit more than they hate Australians and the rest of the West, but they hate more than they love. Dateline Lisbon, Portugal. Socialist candidate Antonio José Seguro has won Portugal's presidency in a decisive landslide, soundly defeating the right-wing challenger. The result strengthens the left's position in the country ahead of key European political debates. Is Europe utterly lost? This observer is not hopeful for them avoiding becoming an Islamic caliphate by the middle of the century. Dateline Bangkok. Thailand's conservative Bhumjaithai party has claimed a surprise election victory and is now positioning itself for coalition talks. The outcome could shift the balance of power in the politically volatile Southeast Asian nation. At least some parts of the world seem to be trying to regain sanity. Dateline Santa Clara, California. The Seattle Seahawks defeated the New England Patriots 29-13 to win Super Bowl 60. Bad Bunny's Spanish-language halftime performance drew both widespread praise for cultural representation from the culturally obsessed and sharp criticism from people who like music, including from President Trump. The clips this observer later saw of the performance shown an anti-United States, pro-illegal migration screed, poorly performed, with garbled sound and a lack of artistry. This observer did not watch the game, and nor did he watch the Turning Point competition halftime show. This observer could care less. Actually, he could not care less. Dateline New York. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed above 50,000 for the first time in history, reflecting sustained market optimism under President Trump and strong investor confidence in the U.S. economy. Dateline Silicon Valley. A growing number of major tech companies are openly embracing 72-hour work weeks. Who do they think they are, Japan? Well, they're sparking renewed debate about burnout, productivity demands, and labor conditions in the high-pressure industry. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how a labor union is legitimately born. Keep it up, you greedy, anxious, competitive tech companies and billionaires. AI is going to take you out anyway. Dateline Milan Cortina, Italy. The Winter Olympics continued in Milan Cortina with new events making their debut. Athletes faced climate-related challenges, while standout moments included a dramatic crash by U.S. skier Lindsey Vonn. And another global dateline here. Scientists are advancing techniques to recover rare earth elements from landfills and coal ash, offering a potential alternative to traditional mining, if not an alternative, at least a supplement, and easing some of the long-term supply concerns for critical industries and defense technologies. I thank you for listening. Please join me tomorrow to once again grok the news. I'm Robert Gardner. Godspeed and God bless.